And I just want everyone who is listening to this right now, if you have a dog and you want them to listen better, you're in the right place. But if you don't want them just to listen better, but you want them to like happily listen to you and actually have a relationship where it's not like you're bossing your dog around, you're definitely in the right place. So if you find yourself nodding or smiling along, just want to encourage you and say like congratulations for being here right now, because you're giving us our time. I take it seriously. I'm going to answer your questions. Yeah, so my name is Brady. I empower puppies, dogs, and their owners to have more success at home and around town, all while having fun. How I got started doing this is I grew up with dogs. Truthfully, to take you back to like my childhood, they were really wild animals. They would run away. They would get into the trash. We lived on a lot of land, so they caused some ruckus. Sometimes some dogs we kept, some dogs we didn't keep. But my family, they kind of just let the dogs do whatever they wanted to. So when I got my dog, I wanted more of an inside dog, a dog that would listen to me and like actually had a relationship with me. And so I bought him the best food. I let him sleep in my bed, but it did not work. I left for, I remember 2 hours one time and I came back and there was a huge chunk of my carpet missing. There was like 4 piles of poop. I had to go get a carpet cleaner and clean the carpet. It was miserable, man. And I hit my rock bottom. I don't know if you've hit your rock bottom with your dog before and you got some training or whatever it may be, but I hit my rock bottom. I had to go find something other than YouTube to go learn from. So I found someone, her name is Susan Garrett. She is a 30 plus time world agility champion in Canada. And I've paid her thousands of dollars to invest in my dog and to teach him how to crate train and not to bark when I left the house or to ring bells so he can go potty or just to listen with distractions and how to make choices and play games around these things. Because I don't know about you, but I'm an active guy. I got an Australian Shepherd because I like to run. I played sports in high school. So I don't know. Does anyone here, did you get the dog for the same reason or why did you get your dog?
I got my dog. It was around the time of like the pandemic, and
Okay.
me and my wife just got married around that time, and it kind of like, oh, what do we do? It's like you get bored and you try to find things to do, and we both love dogs ourselves, so we were looking up dogs,
Yeah.
and we decided to get Sasha at the time, and we both never really owned a dog ourselves, so it was kind of our first dog, and yeah, we had no idea what we were doing. It was definitely a huge learning curve.
Yeah. I remember I was working like my first big boy job and I was there for like 6 months and then I was like, I want a dog. And they're like, bro, don't get a dog. You just turned like, you just got this job. Don't do it. I was like, no, I want a
Yeah,
dog. And yeah, then I had to miss all the company outings and all these things because, when you have a dog, it changes your whole life.
yeah,
And yeah, there's lots of learning with that. So,
yeah. And
anywho,
I just feel so guilty, when we work like 8 hours, 9 to 5 or something. Like I'm just like so scared to like do like crate training or just I don't know. I just feel so guilty, feel so bad. I'm not sure, if you've come across that yourself.
yeah, feeling guilty or sad about crate training is what you're asking?
Crate training or leaving your dog hours at a time by themselves.
Yeah, definitely. I try to do my best. Luckily, I do this for full time, so I can be home a lot of the time and working with the dogs. Or when I go out, I can take them with me. But there definitely is. I look at it as uh, a skill set in a sense. Like I want my dog to be able to be comfortable in the crate because I've helped volunteer at some grooming places around town in Austin, Texas.
Hmm.
And I didn't know this, but what happens is a dog gets groomed, they get washed, and then they have to dry, and they air dry typically, or you got blow dryers on them, but they're like cool air, they're not hot air. So it takes a long time for the dogs to dry. You can't cut their hair while it's wet. Like when I get my hair cut, it's wet, you know? Uh, so it takes a long time. So the dogs have to be comfortable in the crate for maybe 2, 3, 4 hours at a time because you got other dogs coming in and out too. So I look at it as being proactive rather than reactive, knowing that my dog's
Oh
going to
yeah,
be in those situations and we got to practice those. Obviously, it can get abused, and you want to do your best to make sure that your dog is getting out to go to the bathroom on time, and they're getting exercise and growth, and they're going new places, and you're giving them love. You want to make sure all those things are met. But then there's also times where you got to practice, and that's where most of my clients, they come in because they what I see end up happening is they'll have a puppy and they'll leave it in an X pen, and that's like a gated area, like a playpen
Mm-hmm.
kind of. But then the puppy will like poop somewhere, and then they'll move it all over the place, and they'll create a huge mess, and then they'll eat the puppy pad. And then some dogs, if you leave them in there too much, they learn how to climb the side of it, and then they'll jump out on the other side, and you come home and your puppy's jumping, and you're like, how did you get out? It's like, it's just not safe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, when we first got Sasha, we learned that the hard way, and then we would like gate her into the restroom so she has some area to play. And then when we moved into a different place, a studio, it was like she didn't want to do that anymore. She didn't want to be in the little smaller space, and we ended up just leaving her out and with the camera on, and she got used to that, and now she just sleeps and just waits for us to come back home. So I mean, we tried to. It took a while for her to get used to that, but it's interesting to see how different dogs behave and how different dog owners train their dogs that they have. Um, I had a question for you though. Like, what was one of your most challenging dog transformations that you had to deal with?
yeah, there's been a few because they're all different in their own ways. Like I've worked with aggressive dogs, and I've worked with like super smart dogs, and then very driven dogs. I'd say one of the most challenging, um, man, I had this dog. His name was Oliver. He was this little Pomeranian, and Pomeranians are kind of notorious for just doing whatever they want. And this guy had gotten to the point to where he couldn't be trusted around the house because he would just pee on everything, and so he had to wear a diaper around the house.
Mm.
And when people would come over, they would bark and they would like bite at people's heels, and they didn't really come when called. They kind of slept in their not kind of they slept in their parents' beds most every single night, and it just wasn't working. They had done it for a while. He was 3 years old. I boarded him about like a year and a few months ago.
Mm.
Anywho, uh, it was brilliant because when I took him, anytime I take a dog, it's a whole new environment. So immediately it's kind of like a shock to a dog, and I have to be very careful. I got to meet the dog where they're at, and normally they go into like they're a little bit nervous. They're like, "Am I safe here? Like, can I trust this guy?" So the first few days they sleep in my room, but everything is very structured. So I believe in a routine. So it's you're going to take a nap, and then we're going to go outside and we're going to go potty, and then we're going to do some training, and then you're going to play and hang out for a little bit and be a dog and just chill around the house. And during this time, I boarded him. This was a longer board and train because I took him for 2 weeks, and then he had a sister, Winnie. She was like 8. She was 8, I believe. She was a little bit older. She was like an older Chihuahua. And she had her own things, right? Like she didn't pee on things, but she definitely didn't come when called. She barked a lot at people. She didn't really like people either, so she would kind of like bark at them the whole time.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I took Oliver for 2 weeks, and then I took Winnie for 2 weeks, and I kept Oliver the whole time. So I had Oliver for a month and Winnie for 2 weeks. And during this time, we were able to work on just a way more reliable coming when called, and they actually enjoy coming when called because it turns into a game of chase. And I also play hide and seek with the dog, so you got to wait inside your crate. The crate doors open, and then I go hide, and then I call you, and it teaches the dog how just like to do everything they can to find you.
Hmm.
Um, so that was brilliant. Crate training, we were able to help them out, which having a dog with crate training, now I can make sure that there's no accidents happening around the house. And then I can teach you a new way to communicate. So I taught them how to ring potty bells to be able to go potty, right? And just to appreciate going potty more, right? So it was like going back to having a puppy, and every time he would go pee, I would give him a treat out there. So he's like, "Oh, this isn't so bad." I'm like, "See, dude, I told you this is a much better place to pee." And then
Yeah.
walking on leash too, they had these harnesses, and they were just basically like sled dogs almost. They were two little small dogs, but they would whole lot while you were walking, and they would smell, and Oliver liked to pee on everything. So he would just be pulling you back and forth, on leash. So I was able to teach him how to wear a gentle leader, which is a nice way to manage your dog walking next to you better than a flat collar, or I don't use prong collars or e-collars or anything like that. So I was able to teach them how to stay close, and then again, how to enjoy staying close by rewarding those moments. So there's so many different like little nuggets in there. I try to give you a little bit from like coming when called to crate training to walking on leash, but that was one of my favorite clients, and that was life changing because they had to, shortly after I finished the board and train, they had to go on a long road trip because they had a family member who passed away, and they wanted to bring their dogs. And luckily, I had crate trained them, so they were able to ride in their crates during the trip, which is much safer to ride in the crate in the car, right? Just because if anything were to happen, you're at least in a safer spot. And then they were able to go on the trip with them, and they weren't worried about them peeing on things, and they were able to like sleep in their crates, so they didn't have to worry about them like just wandering around the house or causing any trouble like that. So it was just a whole transformation in their lives and in the dogs'
Wow.
lives, you know?
Wow. So you normally, is that part of your normal transformation? You do board and train, or is there sometimes you go over and like you do like a day or two or a week where you're working with the owners and the dogs at the same time?
So I've recently changed my program, and now it's more of a process. So now it's a 90-day or 3-month program. And I include in there a 2-week board and train, 8 in-person lessons, 6 group classes, virtual lessons for like an online community and like a WhatsApp group. So now I include all of that in my training. Back in the day, I would just do the board and train, and then I would do like 4 lessons with you, which was good for the people. They were able to get what they needed, but dogs grow and they change and things come up. So working with someone for 3 months allows me to really make sure that they understand how to handle the problems in the future, because I want to make
Hmm.
sure that you become a dog trainer. So I don't have to always, you don't have to call me or rely on me. You can be like, okay, how do I fix this? It's like A, B, C.
Yeah. And what was your mindset in starting like your own business and dog training?
You know, man, this is funny because this company that I was at, I had worked there for 2 years, and I didn't really enjoy the company, but they paid well. And my birthday, it was just my birthday weekend, and I was with a bunch of friends, and I got back in the office, and uh, they called me into the office, and they didn't even know it was my birthday. That was like the first thing, and
Wow.
then they let me know that it was slow, and then they were laying me off, and I was like, well, I guess this is kind of a blessing, because like no one said happy birthday. They didn't know it was my birthday or anything, which I don't care. Like I don't go bloating around my birthday anyways. And then like laid me off the day after my birthday. I was like, okay, whatever. And so this was June of 2019. And I had already been doing dog training with like friends and family, and kind of just like helping people around, like getting like organic referrals. And so I was like, okay, well, this is kind of a good time to see what I could do from this, because I didn't like this company. I made good money, but it didn't really like give me any type of fulfillment at all. And so there's a science to success, and then there's the art of fulfillment. So then I started just helping dogs. I was charging like $25 a lesson, just helping as many people as I could, you know, and that's where I started from.
Wow, that sounds awesome. And it's been going well for you so far, I see.
Man, it's so interesting because I love dog training and I'm very good at it. And I like the psychology behind it. Like I study NLP, and like I'm a big Tony Robbins person too. And then the marketing part of it, that's like a whole nother branch of it. And it's just me and my girlfriend that run most of it. So I'm like learning how to run click funnels and make offers to people, and like give things away that are valuable. Uh, and then just generate leads from that too. It's been a whole process. So I've been at it, 5, 6 years now. I've learned a whole lot, and I've learned to utilize. Some of my clients are brilliant at at digital marketing or SEO. So I'm no dummy. I learn from my clients as well. And so when I'm there, I'm like, what do you like to do? You know, and I pick their brains, and I learn things. Some of my clients are amazing illustrators or graphic designers, and they've helped design things for me. So it's been a whole learning process. I'm getting better and better at it each time, but I've lost a lot of money through Facebook ads, Instagram ads as well. Oh man,
Yeah.
it's been wild.
Yeah, that's tough when you're starting something new, and yeah, you're getting your own learning curve in running a business. And but I love that the fact that you're not afraid to ask questions or pick people's minds on things and learn from them. What would you tell someone, maybe a young, college student or someone that wants to get into the business and they don't like what they're doing now, they love dogs, and what advice would you say for someone that wants to maybe get into dog training?
Yeah, I would tell you there's a few good books to go out and start off reading. Some good people out there to go find and nerd out about. Because, and then the other thing too with dog training is you have to be able to talk to both the human and the dog and communicate. And the dog is a lot of body language type stuff. So I'm paying attention to that. Humans too are a lot of body language, right? I do a lot of mirroring with humans as well. But you got to really fall in love. I know some people who they're like, oh, I love dogs, but I hate people. And I'm like, well, I hear some things coming up that may stop you in the future. Like, are you interested in addressing those now? Because I hate to point it out to you because you're going to teach them things and then they're not going to do it. And then you got to hold people accountable, but you got to do it in an elegant way. I'll tell you, I'm the oldest of six. So I used to run and lead with punishment and fear. And let me tell you, I've heard some stories. Like my siblings told me one time I took all their crayons, I put them in a pot and I melted them. And I was like, I didn't do that. And they're like, you did that. And I was like, that wasn't me. I'm an angel. What are you talking about? And they're like, bro, I remember you did that. And me and my brother is all really close now. But that's kind of how I led back in those days. And I've learned a lot about leadership. I know now that you can lead in three types of ways. You could use fear and intimidation. You could bribe people. And I sure bribe my siblings. Sometimes I'd be like, hey, you want ice cream? Like, I need you to go do this thing, right? But what happens with bribes is the next time I say, do you want ice cream? They go, do you have chocolate syrup? And I go, okay, I'll get you chocolate syrup. And the next time they're like, you got any cookies and cream Hershey bars, and they keep like asking for more and more, I'm like, dude, I'm broke. Come on. Um, and then the third way to lead is with growth and inspiration, inspiring people to grow. And it's way more fun to ask questions and inspire someone to be like, why do you want to like get your dog to be better? Like how would your life change if your dog was able to go to their crate when you asked them to, or they came when called, or you were able to bring them to a restaurant with you and you weren't worried about them peeing on things.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if I were to tell someone who's in college, right, I'd tell you to um, read the book "Don't Shoot the Dog" by Karen Pryor. Read and watch some of Susan Garrett's stuff. She was trained by Bob Bailey, who was like the founding father of animal psychology. And then, I'm a big Tony Robbins person, but go find some um, someone that inspires you, that's really good at leadership, that you look up to, and see how they influence people and start studying what they do and how they say that what they're saying. Because at a certain level, people are saying things for a certain reason, and you can study those types of things.
That's so good. I'm the second oldest of six. I have five brothers, and
Nice.
I remember those times where my older brother would be the one convincing me to go do something, and I would be like, okay, I'll go do it. But yeah, I
Yeah.
did. So I kind of hear what you're saying. I mean, relate a lot with that.
Yeah, there's so many stories. Like, there you go. Luckily, my siblings aren't on the podcast. Like, one time I flew an electric helicopter into my sister's face, and oh
Oh my
man, she just
gosh.
never let me live that thing down. But I was like 8. Come on.
Yeah. Forgive and forget.
But no,
But
it's
yeah,
all good.
I have some friends that messaged me on social when I told them I was going to be interviewing a dog trainer, and they have dogs of their own. So I have a couple of questions for you from them. First one
Nice.
is, should you discipline your dog? And if yes, then how?
Nice. Yeah, so I believe that positive isn't permissive. So I believe that there's got to be consequences to things. And how, I don't know about your mom or your grandma maybe, but if I didn't finish my plate of food, I couldn't get up from the table. Or if some of my friends came over and they're like, hey, can Brady come out? And my room wasn't clean, my mom would ask me, she goes, hey, is your room clean? If it's not clean, she would say, how are you going to play with your friends if your room's not clean? And so there's things set up to where there's pain, but it's self-inflicted because it's like, oh man, this is kind of my fault. My room's not clean, you know? And so for the dog, it's like, hey, if I drop food on the ground, are you going to sit and ask for it and ask please, or are you going to try to take it? Now, if a dog tries to take it, all I do is I cover the food. And that's all I do, right? I don't stop them from trying to take it besides just covering the food. Eventually the dog gives up, and I play a specific game to help teach the dog this kind of thought process, because dogs being undomesticated, right? Being wild animals, they would need to just be able to find whatever they wanted to eat, take it, kill it, and then eat it, right? And the ones that were the most diligent with that were the ones who survived. Nowadays, I'm telling you to turn off that instinct of yours. When you see food, I don't want you to get it. I want you to understand that, like, we live in abundance, and I'm going to make sure that you're fed, and I got lots of treats and all these good things. But you're domesticating the dog in a way. So there's specific games that I play to show the dog, like, hey, you don't take things from me. And all I do is I just close the treats with my hands in it, and it's stopping the dog from taking it. And then eventually the dog stops trying to take it and they back away. And then I open my hand. And then what does the dog do? They try to jump back and try to take the treats again. Then I close my hand. Now I got a little game going back and forth, and the dog figures it out after a few minutes. And they're like, every time I back away, he opens my hand. And then they'll like sit one time, and then I'll give them a quick treat, and they'll be like, that was weird. And then some dogs will try to take the food again. Then I'll close my hand, and I just go back and forth, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like a fun training game you can play with them to start teaching them like what's right and what's wrong. And then there's moments, right? Like if there's a dog who has an accident inside the house, which has happened before, all I do is I just go run over there real quick. I'll grab them and I'll take them outside. And I'll show them where to go to the bathroom, right? And that's all you need to do. There's no like sticking their nose in it or any of those like old school things, right? It's just like, okay, you take them out. And then the training part of that is like, I got to teach them that they got to ring some bells with their nose or paw the bells and tell me when they have to go to the bathroom. So, and then the other thing too, like I ran a group class the other day here, and some of the dogs were barking at people, right? And they weren't able to control themselves. And all I had the owners do was just create some distance and walk away from the distractions. Or some of them went out the side gate and they went on a little walk with their dog, and then they came back and they tried again. And they asked the dog, like, hey, if we're going to be here, you got to be quiet. And if you're loud, then we're going to leave. So then the dog learns that, okay, maybe I should be quiet if I want to stay around. And you kind of just go back and forth with that. And that's how you communicate with them.
And there was a
Does that
really
help?
when you talked about that, when you're the owner speaking to the dog, there was a stat that you quoted, you know, in one of your other podcasts of how many words a dog can learn. I thought that was very interesting. Do you mind covering that real quick?
Yeah. The average dog can learn 160 words, and that's Pomeranians, Chihuahuas, and then the like border collies and German shepherds who are notorious for being smart, right? And so I'm pretty certain that your dog could learn maybe 20 or 30 more words or new things quite easily. You just got to have the awareness that like the average dog, and there's dogs who've learned over 1,000 words, right? So it's just insane what they're capable of doing.
Yeah, that's insane. When I heard that, I was like, no way. I was like, okay, I gotta
Yeah.
keep talking to her more often and reinforcing it with treats or something.
There's like Bunny, the talking dog, and they have these buttons that they can press. Some of these dogs have like 100 buttons, and they like form sentences. It's if you give them the tools to communicate, you'll be amazed.
Uh, that next question here is, what is your favorite and least favorite breed to work with?
Oh yeah, so yeah, there's two different types. So you got driven dogs and smart dogs. And I did it again. I picked a very driven dog with my first dog, with an Australian Shepherd. And they're great because they'll just break through any like obstacle. And those, you run into challenges too, because like when they want something, they really want something really bad, and they're very driven for it. And so I love those dogs because I consider myself a very driven person, and I like a lot of things. I got a little bit of ADD myself, you know. But I've learned how to tame it and how to have healthy coping methods and how to breathe and to settle myself down and how to have different incantations. So I love my life and I'm so blessed and all these different things, right? So I teach these dogs the same things, and that's really rewarding. And so I did that with Bumblebee, and he's 7 now, like I was mentioning. He's an Australian Shepherd. And my current dog is Curiosity. That's her name. I call it Curry for short, because I like curry. And she's a mini Aussie Doodle, and she has a good amount of poodle in her. And she's really sharp. She's really, really smart, but she has some of that drive in it too. So that's like a nice mix for me. It's like my dream dog of having a dog that's like the herding mentality, but also they'll take a second and they'll watch some things. And I left her with her sister. Her sister and their owners are the ones who I got them from, and we're good friends. And they were watching her for a few days. And this is just an example of smart dogs. Her sister would get a bully stick, and she would want the bully stick, but she's not a high drive dog. She's not just going to go over there and bully someone and take it from her. She's smarter than that. So what she knows is her sister's mildly obsessed with her. So she'll go get a toy and she'll start playing with it herself, and she'll start throwing it around. And my buddy was like, 10 times out of 10, her sister will drop the bully stick and go run over and start trying to play with the toy with her. To which Curiosity will drop the toy, go over and take the bully stick and start eating it. And the dog will play with the toy for like 30 seconds and then realize it's been bamboozled and then be like, oh, you like took my bully stick. So there's pros and cons of both. I really enjoy working with any like golden doodle, labradoodle, or Aussie Doodle or Sheepadoodle. Like I've worked with a bunch of different doodles, and then I've worked with some German Shepherds and some cattle dogs and blue heelers, and it's I teach the same games to them, but the very driven dogs I gotta hold a little bit more accountable because they'll just want to like go and go and go. So if, for example, right, if I play hide and seek with a dog and then I open the crate door and they're supposed to stay in their crate and I go and hide, but I'm listening to see if I hear the pitter patter of their feet. So some of the dogs I take, they'll just like run out of the crate. As soon as they can't see me, they're like, I need to go get them. Right. And then I go, cheater, cheater, pumpkin eater. And I go get them and I help them back in their crate nicely. And then I shut it. And then I ask them to sit and they sit and then I open it and then I walk away again. And I'll do this back and forth with them until they realize that like they don't get to play and get the reward of like me celebrating and giving them a treat, unless they stay in their crate and they wait to be released. Some smarter dogs, they can wait a little bit longer, but it's just a fun way to communicate, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome. You may have answered this one earlier, but it's a question from another one of my friends. They want to know how can they stop their dog from barking when someone rings the doorbell?
Yeah, this is a very interesting one because there are ups and downs of barking at the doorbell, or barking when anyone comes over. I was reading something that you could make your dog an employee by making him like an official guard dog, and like during the night, keep guard of the house. And if anyone tries to break in, they let you know, they keep you safe. So for me, I allow my dogs to bark if someone were to like knock or approach the door because I want them to kind of know. But then the next thing from there is like getting them to stop barking, and to settle back down quicker. So that for me is the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. So to do that, I use a blanket to communicate with them. So what I'll do is when the dogs start barking, right, two parts, right? First, I teach them to speak and I'll reward them for barking, right? And I'll put speak on command. So I say speak, and the dogs will all start barking, and then I have to teach them how to be quiet. So what I'll do is I teach them to lay down and be quiet. But if they start barking and they continue to bark, I have a blanket over the crate and I put the blanket down. And this just tells them that you can't see anything anymore. You should stop barking. Sometimes the dogs don't stop barking, and then I'll just lean over and I'll just like nicely, calmly, just give my presence to the dog, and I'll just be with them until they settle down. And then when they settle down, I'll lift up the blanket. So I show the dogs how to settle down when I tell them to. So now when I put down the blanket, they know just to like lay down and settle down. And then when they settle down, I lift up the blanket again. So it is, it's one of those things though where you need stimulus control. So I do this in the crate a lot of the times, um, just because things, or on leash with the dog. So if I'm at a person's house, like I'll do it on leash first, because if your dog's just running all over the place, it's just too crazy at first. So you got to have some sort of stimulus control in there, so you can just show the dog just more clearly, you know?
And then how do you train your dog not to be so territorial with things like socks or toys?
Yeah, that's another good one. That I believe starts with the story you tell yourself. Some of my clients, they say that all the toys in the house are their dog's toys. And don't get me wrong, my dogs have toys, but also a lot of their toys, they're my toys, and I allow you to play with these toys. So having some sort of them understanding that these things aren't theirs, or like a bone, like I'll practice taking a bone. I'll trade with them. So I'll ask them to drop it, and I'll give them a treat, and then I'll take the bone from them. But it's my bone. So if I say it's time to stop eating the bone, then it's time to stop eating the bone right now. Sometimes it gets dangerous. They get too pokey, or I there's too much stuff, and you can't eat the whole thing in one sitting. So it starts with the story you tell yourself. And then I also do this game where, I told you where I keep food in my hand and I open and close it. I'll do the same thing with the toy. So like I'll have the toy out here and the dog will try to take it from me, and I'll put it to my chest, or I'll cover it depending on how big the toy is. If it's like a tennis ball, and I show the dog, you take things from me. This is my toy. I tell you when you can get this thing. And I start showing them, when I say get this thing, you can get it, but you only get the toy when I say get it. But it's important that you don't teach these things until like you have some motivation for the toy. But if the dog's already territorial, then you got to start showing them some of these rules. Like you don't take things from me, you don't take things from other dogs. And if you do take things, or you do something that I don't like, then I have many timeouts. Right? We were talking about discipline. This is another thing that I do for discipline. Growing up, I stood in the corner for hours, man. I don't know about you, but I stood in the corner for hours. I was grounded for long periods of times. I got in trouble. I was the kid. If you said don't press the button, I'm pressing the fucking button. And I don't know if anyone else here feels like that. You're like, um, so I stood in the corner for a long time. That doesn't work. Long timeouts. What does work though is a mini timeout, letting someone know they messed up. So if something happens, like I'll take the dog, I'll help them to their crate. I'll leave them in there for maybe 2-3 minutes. And then I'll let them back out, and I'll see what their decision is. Is their decision to go immediately back over to the bone and try to steal it? Or is their decision to like maybe go find something else to go do? If they go straight to the bone, then I'm going to go walk over there again. I'm going to go help them back to the crate. I'm going to leave them in there for another 3 minutes or so, and then I'm going to let them back out and see what their choice is again. And so like I'm a firm believer in giving your dog choices in a safe way. Like if your dog is prone to biting, like be very careful taking things away in like territorial dogs. Or there's like bite gloves, or there's even like muzzles, depending on how severe. Some dogs I've worked with are like extremely possessive, and it's a little intermittent when they bite. So like one dog, I reached into the back just to like pet him, and he bit my arm. Right, I wasn't expecting it. We had been cool this entire time. I met him multiple times, but this dude was stressed out in this moment, and he reacted that way. So then it's like showing him, when you get into moments of stress, that's not the behavior that we need right now. What we need is to different coping mechanisms.
Yeah. So you're a big fan of repetition. It sounds like and like reinforcing and just keep on repeating. And then the dog at a certain point will learn. Does that sound like a good summary?
Yeah, and also positive isn't permissive. So a lot of times, like if I have a dog who's very territorial, I'm gonna interrupt their pattern, and so I'm gonna start changing the routine of the house. So if there's certain triggers around the house that cause the dog to be reactive. So I would just point out those things, and I would address those things specifically by um, I would change it, right? So if they're fighting over toys or a bone or whatever it is, then I'd make sure that one dog was in one crate and another dog was in another crate, and they could enjoy their bones separately, right? And as they feel safe doing that, and I reward them and I practice drop it and trading with the bones and all these things, then we can give them back permission to be out in the house and do these things again too. So you got to like change how you're thinking about the situation. And yeah, consistency, repetition is important, but you got to be um, you have to be very diligent and be certain in your mind, like this has to change and it has to change now. And I'm going to go through the motions, and I'm going to take the time to commit to getting this fixed.
That's good. I have two final questions, Brady, as we wrap up. First is,
Yeah.
Where can people follow you, and where can people get connected with you to learn more? Maybe they want to, see your training and, follow you. And then the next question, final one is, what is one thing you'd like listeners to take away from today's conversation?
Yeah. So you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok right now. I'm doing a fun little series where I'm teaching Curiosity, the 7-month-old Aussie Doodle, how to ride this little skateboard. And the skateboard, when I bought it on Amazon, it said it was for like 5-year-olds. And I was like, okay, maybe it'll be like yay big and like a little bit wider, easy to ride. Nah, this thing is really small, like really tiny. And I was like, oh man, this is going to be challenging. My brother's helping me make some of the edits on these videos now. And I'm like, bro, I think I have to return it. He's like, no way, you have to teach her how to ride this thing. Like, so if you want to follow along on the journey, it's funny. We've been at it for 3 days now, so we've got her to put 3 paws on it. She's still a little bit uneasy about it. I put rubber bands on the wheel so it doesn't roll as much. And anywho, if you follow us on that journey, ND Dog Training. So N is in Nancy, D is in dog, and then again dog training. That's both TikTok and Instagram. And then one thing that I want someone to take away from this is, when you get furious, get curious. I've seen there's a lot of different ways to lead. Like I explained a little bit earlier, if there's something happening that you want to change, go out and go find someone who's changed it and go learn from them. It's what I had to do. It's what any person with humility has to do. Like we're all at a starting point. Like I'm running a marathon. This is the first year that I've ever run a marathon. I've run a half marathon. But guess what? I went and got a coach, and like I'm learning how to pace out my runs and make sure that I'm prepared and I'm set aside enough time, right? I'm taking singing lessons. I paid a coach, right? Because I want to be a better speaker. So I got to learn how to control my inflection. So if there's something that you want to change with your dog, go find someone that's changed it, and then ask questions like you asked me to find out where they stand on these things, to make sure you align, because it's a voyage with your dog, and it's nice to have someone that you can talk to that you feel comfortable with, or you align on your values and how you approach things. If you're like a positive reinforcement, or if you're a balance trainer, there's all sorts of different things. I don't get into all the drama in it, but I am who I am, and I try to promote myself. So I also have an inner circle. So if you just want a community of like-minded people too, you can go to my website at newdirectiondogtraining.com and come join our inner circle so we can just talk more about dogs. But when you get furious, get curious and start asking different questions. So
I love that. Thank you so much. I'm gonna
make sure. What's great about this problem?
Yeah, I'll make sure that we definitely have that in the show notes, so people can go connect with you. I already started following you on Instagram. I'm going to start following you on TikTok. I'm really curious to see if you get Curiosity on this skateboard. That'll be so funny.
Me too.
All right. Thank you, Brady. Thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Anytime, man. Anytime. I'm going to send out some lasers.
There you go.
Bye, man.
Take care.